wait for so long, right? We have to get going. So my name is Kendra Cantrell. I'm the Director of Guidance here at Tantascwa High School. This is my 10th year at Tantascwa somehow. Time has flown by and I just love working with all of your students in the community. Last year was a very exciting year for guidance. We had a huge flood in our department. We were in closets and kitchenettes for a few months. Then we were in trailers outside for 7 months. We're finally back in our offices and we're very happy to be there. So we're hoping that this year goes a little less exciting than last year in that respect. Tonight we are going to be reviewing the college process. And this is really the nitty-gritty nuts and bolts, what your kid has to do and when, and how to use Naviance to get everything done. The presentations that we give in January of the junior year really talk about kind of the overview of the college process. I like to think of that as college workshop number 1. This is sort of college workshop number 2. So you kind of hopefully know the basics about college admissions and kind of the bigger picture pieces. I'll be sprinkling that information certainly in throughout the presentation. If you need to ask me some questions, I'm happy to stop and answer that. But this goes a little bit more in depth and in detail in terms of tasks and what your child needs to do to get off and running and apply to college and hopefully be accepted. So my hope is that we'll review the PowerPoint presentation I prepared. Then we'll look at Naviance a little bit and I'll kind of do some playing around up here so you can watch me as I'm showing you different things that you can do on Naviance, and then I'll take questions at the end. So that's hopefully the plan for the evening. I wish I had cookies or coffee or something delightful, but I don't. So hopefully the packet is enough. So in terms of the packet, let's just take a very quick look at it. All of your children received this packet today, and they also received this presentation. So this really is an encore performance for the parents so that they can know what your child learned today and what they were told. So in terms of the packet, the first page of the packet outlines a little bit about Naviance. It talks about the website to access Naviance as things have changed with Naviance. They've done a lot of updates this summer. They changed their login website, so things are a little different if you've ever seen it before and played around on it. So this sheet just gives the children and you an overview of what they'll need to do in Naviance and how it can be useful to them throughout the college process. And we'll be talking about Naviance a lot tonight. The second page of the packet is talking about how to use Naviance for college research and how to complete surveys and why they need to complete surveys. The next page is about teacher recommendations, matching Common App account to Naviance. Again, I'll explain what that even is. It's really, again, all the nitty-gritty Naviance pieces in those first 3 pages. The next page of your packet is what I feel is one of the most important parts, and that's the college planning calendar. I'm a very type A person. I want to know exactly what I need to do and when. This is what was very helpful to me when I was kind of looking at the broad task of, how do I apply to college? Knowing what to do month by month is very helpful, and I think students do well with that structure. So this is the month-by-month plan with everything that they need to do in terms of the college process. So if your child is wondering, where do I even start? Start by reading this calendar and look at September. That's what I would say to them, because it'll give them a nice place to begin. The next page of the packet is the college entrance testing schedule. We will go over that on the PowerPoint, but this is just a little broader. It has a little further dates listed throughout the course of the year. We all want to make sure that your children have taken those college entrance testing that they need to. Okay. And this outlines when those registration deadlines are. College Board is notorious for taking your money, and so it's important to know the deadlines so you don't have to pay the $30 late fee. So please make note of these dates. The next page of the packet is one we have put in every single packet for your child for the past 4 years. It's the Massachusetts State University and UMass admission standards. These schools have very specific guidelines as to who can even apply to their schools. And so this chart right here, it's called the sliding scale, gives you a sense of exactly what GPA and test scores are necessary, as well as course requirements, for your child to apply to one of these public schools. I tell all of my students they should all have at least one public school on their list, and so it's really important for them to know that you need a 3.0 or above to apply to any of the state schools. And if you don't have a 3.0 or above, the sliding scale comes into play here, and that's when SAT scores and ACT scores start to matter. And for those students who are not wonderful test takers, this is a very good incentive to have a 3.0 GPA if possible, so that they don't have to have those things considered. On the next page, we have just a little chart of an example, reach possible and safety school. What constitutes a reach for one person might be a safety for another person. And so this chart just kind of gives a student an idea of what a school might be for them. If they're looking at UMass Amherst and they're looking at their own statistics, would that school be a reach for them? Or would it be a safety school? Again, it's going to be different for each child, but this is just something helpful to kind of get an idea of where they might fall. The next page of the packet is websites that are very important. There's a lot of college research websites listed. Naviance, of course, is what we're going to talk about today, but there's also a whole host of other ones that have great information. There's their testing websites for SAT, ACT, there's NCAA if your student is an athlete. And then there's also information about scholarships, financial aid, the FAFSA. So these are important websites to kind of know. On the back of that page is information about scholarships. That process really doesn't begin until February of next year, in 2019. That's when the local scholarship process begins. Of course, there's always national and local scholarships that become available throughout the year. And those are listed on Naviance. So your child can check those at any time and see what scholarships are currently available and apply for those at any time. But the local scholarship process, where those awards are given out at class night, if you remember, that process happens in February of next year. It also talks about at the bottom some of the Mass State scholarships, the John and Abigail Adams and the Staley Z. Koplik. Some of those scholarships, well, they're all determined by MCAS scores, and we find out in October who is eligible for the Abigail Adams. So we'll be meeting with those students at that time. October, yeah. The next page of the packet is tips for writing a college essay. I think this is a very concise document that really does help students figure out what to avoid and what to write about. And I think it's a good place to begin if they're a little bit lost as to where to start and what to write about. And then the next page is the activities resume. We're going to be asking for your students to fill out information as to what they've done over the past 4 years, so we can write good letters of recommendation for them. That survey is in Naviance, but there's also a hard copy here if they prefer to do a hard copy. Some people are old school like the next page of the packet is a college visit checklist. If you went on any college visits this summer, they may have all felt like they blended together. It's really hard after you see a few to remember what school you liked, what school had that great dining hall, what school had that wonderful program and professor that you talked to. This worksheet can really be helpful to bring along with your child while they're doing those college visits so that they can organize their mind and really make sure that they know what they liked about each school and give them a very fair assessment at the end of all of those visits, which again start to blur together after you do a few. And on the last page of the packet, tips for a successful campus visit and interview. We all want to encourage our students to go on campus visits. I don't think you want to sign up to pay an exorbitant amount per year and never have seen the school, because you're not going to know if you're happy there, if you'd be comfortable, if it's the right fit for you. So I think a campus visit is a great first step after you do your initial research, which we'll talk about today. And also campus interviews can be very helpful to students, especially if your child is a little bit on the lower end of the acceptance profile of a typical student. If you can sit down across from the admission rep and have a phenomenal interview, and they're able to put a face to your application and fall in love with your child as a person and feel like they're the perfect fit for my campus, they might be willing to make exceptions and allow that child acceptance to school because of that phenomenal interview. So that's always something to think about if your child is really dead dead set on one school, or if they are really interested in a school but they fall a little bit below the typical criteria, okay? Any questions about the packet? Again, I just went very quickly through the packet, but we'll go very slowly through the presentation. Any questions on the packet? Okay. So let's start and chat about the four-year college process, as it is very overwhelming. How many of you wonderful parents and guardians are already a little bit overwhelmed? Anybody? Yeah. Anyone just plain excited? You're not overwhelmed, you're just like, let's go, this is great. Is everyone excited to have their children leave the house? No. Yay, right? You've raised them right and off they go out of the nest. So congrats to you, the time is around the corner. I have a 4-month-old, so I have a very long road ahead of me, but I look to you for hope. So you've all made it, right? You're here, you're alive, you're well, so I'm looking to you for tips too. All right, so let's get started. Oh, and this little clicker, exciting. All right, so here we all are. This is our guidance department. I think we are one of the very few guidance departments in the state that is as well staffed as we are. Our caseloads are excellent here compared to national standards and even state standards. So we really have a very big staff, and that allows us to give a lot of individual attention to all of your children. Here are our caseloads. We're divided up by academic division and technical division, and then last name. Even if I'm not your child's counselor, I'm always happy to answer questions. If you have anything that you want to ask me, you can always stop by or email or call me. I'm happy to touch base. So before we can even talk about college, we need to talk about graduating from THS. Let's get into that first step. So we have to remember that there's that 140 credit mark that everyone needs to get to. There's graduation requirements of 4 years of English, 3 of math, 3 of science, 3 of history, 3 courses of PE totaling 7.5 credits, 1 health course, and 1 art class. Beyond all of that, it's electives, and it's just credits. So there's a lot of wiggle room for your children to take whatever they're interested in beyond the graduation requirements. The other piece of the puzzle is obviously MCAS, everyone's least favorite thing. Your child needs to pass ELA, science, and math MCAS to graduate as well. So if a student has done everything they need to, it's a glorious day on June 2nd. Everyone's celebrating, it's wonderful. And if you don't, it's a sad day. I told all the students this was my kid, and they believed me. It's just clip art, but my kids are cuter than that kid. So anyway, that's not my kid. My kids are crying 100%. But anyway, so here we go. First step to the next step. So this is the general overview. Here's what every typical application will have. It will first have your test scores. And I'll say a little caveat about that in just a second. But most colleges are looking for either SAT, ACT scores. Some are looking for subject tests. I'll talk about that in a moment. There is now, though, a growing trend of schools that are saying, you know what? Standardized test scores are not indicative of my child's ability to be successful in a college environment. We have great kids who do amazingly well in classes, and they just don't test well. And why should they be kept out of great schools because of low scores? So these schools are bucking the trend of the past and are saying that they're becoming test optional. So in those instances, you will have schools that are not looking for any SATs or ACTs as a part of the application. They're just looking for all of these other components, which we're just going to talk about in a moment. If you want a great list of schools that do not require tests, you should go to www.fairtest.org, fairtest.org, and that provides a comprehensive list of schools that do not require SATs and ACTs. Okay? Now, if your child has done exceptionally well on SATs and ACTs, and even if they're not required, they could certainly send them. Sometimes grants and scholarships become available for very high test scores in those situations. The other caveat I will say is that there are some schools that to get certain scholarships, you have to provide your SAT and ACT scores. So even if you didn't have to send them to get into the school, to get money at the school, you need to send them. So that's their sneaky way sometimes of getting around that test optional and a label that they want to say that they're falling under. So just be very aware of that with scholarships and grants, because that test might be required in those cases. So in addition to testing, There's also, of course, the application itself. So you have your specific college application, or in some cases, the Common Application. Is anyone familiar with the Common App? So the Common App is a consortium of about 500 schools that are all using the same application. It's called the Common App for that very reason. So let's say your child is applying to 7 schools, and let's say 6 of those schools accept the Common Application and 1 doesn't. Your child has 2 choices. They can do 7 individual applications, which can be very time-consuming, or they could do the Common App for 6 schools, and the 7th school will have their specific college application. That's a real time saver. If your child only has 2 schools on the Common App, maybe it's not that worth it, because it is a cumbersome process to go through the Common App. But I would say 3 or more schools that your child is applying to on the Common App, it makes a great deal of sense to do that. Okay? The next piece of the puzzle is your essay, and possibly your supplement. So the essay is the real place where your child gets to talk about who they are and have a voice, have context to their story, their transcript. They're talking about their life and how they're going to impact the campus of that college. This is really one of the most important pieces of the puzzle. There's kids out there who are going to have the same GPA as your child, the same transcript as your child, essentially. But the essay is where they're going to differentiate themselves from everyone else. So this really does need to be taken seriously, and we talked a lot to your children today about writing a solid essay, and we have a great workshop we do in 2 weeks to help them with their essays as well, which I'll talk about at the end. Supplements are smaller essays. They're usually about 1 paragraph or so, and they're sometimes required and sometimes not. It depends on the college, it depends on the application. Typically, it might be a shorter question, what do you think you could contribute to the campus, or why do you want to go to Bridgewater State? And you're just kind of writing a little blurb about yourself or about your interest in the school. The essay is usually 600 to 800 words, a lot bigger. That's the meatier of the written responses in the application. The next piece is letters of recommendation. Guidance counselors and teachers will provide those. Guidance counselors will write one for every child on their caseload. Your child doesn't need to ask us to write their letter. We already are planning to do so. But with teachers, they do need to be proactive and ask 2 teachers to write their letter of recommendation. We talked to them a lot about this in June and said, before you go away for the summer, ask your teachers, because some teachers are incredibly popular and they get asked very quickly to write letters, and they might have to say no, because they've hit their 20th kid or 15th kid and they just can't write anymore realistically this year. So it's really important for your child to act quickly and ask the teachers that they feel they have a good connection with. Also, they could think about teachers who they've had more than once, or it's a teacher they had in junior year. That's great because it's very recent, the teacher remembers them, it's not freshman year where they're 14 and they just, thinking back, oh gosh, I don't really remember that young man as well as I'd like to. So junior year was great. Classes you've had with that teacher more than once, those are good people to ask. If you've had them as a coach or an advisor or some other extracurricular too, that can be wonderful. And then the final piece is thinking about teachers who connect with your major. So if a student is interested in nursing, let's say, they would want to be thinking about asking a math and a science teacher. You're welcome. Because those folks are going to be able to write at length about the qualities and abilities that are going to be important to nursing programs. Math analysis, problem-solving abilities, etc. So again, they need to be thoughtful about who they ask, and they need to be timely about who they ask. Because again, teachers are not sitting around waiting for students to ask them to write letters. They're busy, busy people, and we want to respect their time and ask them now. The last piece of the puzzle is the transcript and the schedule of courses senior year. So the transcript is every class your child has taken since 9th grade, the level, the credits earned, the grade, and the schedule of courses, obviously, is what they're signed up to take this year. I'm sure students think I'm a prickly pain because I push rigor in senior year and I want our students to challenge themselves. There is a real reason for that. Colleges are going to look at these schedules and they're wanting to see rigor all the way up through June. They don't want to see, 4 blocks of underwater basket weaving second semester. You need to be pushing yourself all the way to the end and proving yourself that you're not kind of giving up early. Senioritis is a real affliction. We have seen it claim many lives. We don't want it to claim your child. So you do need to make sure that you're pushing with them and keeping them, plugging right along, no matter how hard it might be. So again, the schedule of senior courses, the transcript, the essay, the schedule, the supplements, the applications, the test scores, all of those pieces come together, and that is what your college application is typically consisting of. Okay? Questions so far? Yes?
Business students, regarding letters of recommendation.
Because there's a new teacher, obviously.
And one last year.
Right, absolutely. So I think that's something that the teacher is going to have to touch upon in their letter and say, I am brand new to the school and I haven't been able to, work with this child for 3 years. However, here are the things that I have seen, right off the bat about this child in the past few months. There is certainly a way to write a letter that can speak to their strengths, even if they haven't known them for 3 years. But you're right, it is a little bit of a challenging situation. Yes? Yep, the coalition app. Mm-hmm. So Naviance is not synced up with the coalition application, so that would be a situation where your child will go into their coalition application and choose their recommenders after they talk to them in person and get their okay. And then it usually happens via email. They're usually sent a secure link, and that teacher would click on that secure link and be directed to a form that they fill out and submit electronically. That's how it's worked for me in the past. It is correct. They'll handle that usually via secure email. Yeah. Any other questions about this piece of the puzzle? Yes? Yep, so what we did today is we had attendance being taken at all of our presentations, and we had students indicate if they're applying early action or early decision next to their name, and so they get pushed up in terms of our group meetings and our individual meetings because we know they're on a faster track. Yes, absolutely. So, all right, so now that we've talked about the bigger picture, let's break all these different pieces down a bit. So the first piece of the puzzle, as we've spoken about, is testing. I said to your children, every child in here, if you're planning to go to a four-year college, should have already taken the SATs once, in May, June, or August. There were some sheepish-looking children staring back at me, who definitely didn't heed our instructions and our warnings over the past few months to say you have to sign up and get that squared away. If your child is one of those little cherubs in that boat, they are going to need to move quickly and sign up for the October test, and then hopefully again for the December test, I would recommend. There's 3 different tests that we're talking about. Most often here in New England, schools are looking at the SATs, and that is the SAT reasoning, critical reading, math, and writing. It's a 3-part exam, and you can take it without writing. But no child should be taking it without the writing section, and here's the reason why. So there are some schools that only accept the SAT with writing. And so if your child did not opt for that 3rd section, they would have to take the entire SAT over again if they wanted to apply to a school that required the writing section on the test. So you don't want your child to be in that situation. So please make sure that they sign up for the SAT with writing at least one more time in the fall if they've taken it already once in the spring. The subject tests are a little different. They are 1-hour exams on one subject. That could be chemistry, math level 2, US history, physics, whatever it may be that your child is interested in and that relates to their major. These tests are offered the same day as the SAT reasoning, but a student can't take both. You can only take the reasoning test or up to 3 subject tests on test day. So if your child is applying to a highly selective school, you may see subject tests required. They're not really being offered very much anymore, not offered at Worcester State, Westfield State, some of those, most of the public schools are not asking for subject tests, but there are definitely some very selective schools that are looking for those tests for specific majors. So that's another piece of the puzzle with knowing where you're applying. Your child needs to know where you're applying so that they can make sure they have the right test taken before they have to apply or around the time they have to apply. The last test that we talk about when we say college entrance testing is the ACTs. This has English, math, reading, writing, and a science component. Sometimes we recommend that a student take the ACTs because they're good at science. It's also a little bit more user-friendly. It's not as kind of cryptic as some of the SATs used to be. And some students do a little bit better on the ACTs than they might on the SAT. So if your child's not a phenomenal test taker, maybe they take the SATs twice and the ACTs once, and you kind of see which score is better. Colleges will accept either. There's no school that I know that only accepts SAT or only accepts ACT. They're really interchangeable. So if your child takes one and does better on that, that's the one they should send off to the colleges. Yes, you can. Absolutely. So here are the updated testing deadlines. So the regular registration deadline for the October 6th test has passed, but the late testing is still available. Again, you have to pay a late fee to register by September 26th for that test, and there are seats available. The next test is November 3rd, and that has an October 5th registration deadline, and then December 1st has a November 2nd registration deadline. Again, those are the dates for subject tests and SAT reasoning. It is in your packet as well. Below are ACTs. We don't offer the ACTs here at Tantascwa, but Worcester, Munson, there's other schools locally that do, so your child will just have to travel to take that. We used to offer it here, but we had such low response that it just didn't fiscally make sense to offer it. The thing about SATs, if your child did kind of okay in May or June or August, they just added an August test date, and some of our students participated. And they did okay, but they really feel like there's a little bit of room for improvement. I would caution them against signing right up again for October 6th. The reason is because you want to provide them time to do the heavy lifting and the prep work to get their score raised by the next time they take the test. Of course, the scores will just raise kind of naturally. If you take the same test twice, you're going to do a little bit better the second time because you're familiar with the test and the questions they're going to ask in the format. That always happens. But you also want to do some of that prep work to try and bring your score up. If you've been on to Khan Academy or your child's been on to Khan Academy, it's just a phenomenal website. They've partnered with the College Board, and they have free testing prep materials, full-length tests, targeted questions for specific sections your child may struggle with. It is the best way to do free prep to prepare for the SATs. It's on your packet on the SAT testing page. At the bottom is the website, so it's already in your packet. And I would direct your child to look at that website and start to do some of that prep work. And again, taking it in November provides 6 weeks of time where they can really do the prep work and hopefully raise that score. Any questions on the testing piece? Does that all kind of make sense so far? Okay. The last piece I will say right here is that, and students sometimes forget this, you have to pay to send your SAT scores to the colleges. Colleges want them officially from College Board or officially from ACT. We don't have access to the official scores, only they do. So you, of course, have to pay a fee per school to send all of your scores off to all of these colleges. So again, that's something that students need to remember. They may think counselors are sending their test scores, but we are not. It's their responsibility to do that because only they have mom and dad's credit card to pay. send off those scores. Okay. Any questions? Yes. Absolutely. So there's something called the super score with SATs, and typically colleges are employing the super score method. And basically what that is let's say your child took the test in May and did phenomenally in math and not so great in English, and kind of mid-range in writing. Writing's not really included in the super score. The next time they took the test, they performed amazingly in the opposite one, right? What the college does is they're going to cherry pick the highest scores from each test administration to create that super score. So even if the student, let's say, got a 400 on one time of critical reading and a 600 on the other, they're just going to throw that 400 out, and they're going to focus on the 600 that they got and create the highest possible score for them, and that's what they'll use to consider their application. Yes.
If his writing score was acceptable, would that pursue a second go around? Would they use that score as
Yes, they'll still super score the critical reading and math, even if he doesn't do the optional writing part. Mm-hmm.
but they'll use that sole writing?
Yes, they'll have to use the sole writing response, because that's the only one that there is, but they'll super score the others. Yep, absolutely, yes.
So they show, so we in May.
Yep.
And then they take it again in October.
Yep,
We pay to have the score sent to the college.
yep. They're gonna take the highest score from each administration.
All schools will do that.
Most schools do. Most schools do. I can't speak to say that 100% of schools do, but that's how most schools are operating, yes.
Otherwise,
They would, if your child said, okay, I took it in May, I took it in June, I'm only gonna send the May score, that's the only score they'll see. Then you would, exactly, you would select which ones they see. Correct, yes.
What is the fee?
I believe the fee this year is around $15 per school,
Okay.
I think. They raise it every year, every year. And it's the same, I mean, how much does it take to click a button and say, I don't know, it's $15 or something now. Yes,
So just to clarify, we
Yes.
need to make sure that if they've taken it multiple times, that we pay and send those scores.
even if
For
you've
each
taken it
child.
once, you have to pay and send your score.
Right.
Right,
But
Absolutely.
multiple times if we want that super score. to be
yes.
considered. Okay.
Yes, yep, you're gonna wanna, if you did better on one administration than another in a subject area, you wanna send everything, because they're just gonna cherry pick. Yep. Yes? You pay for each time you send scores to a school. So if you say, I wanna send, my May and my Octobers, it's just one fee to send it to that school. Correct. Any other questions? Isn't testing fun? Makes me a little excited. All right, so, again, this. Okay. So now that we've talked about testing, hopefully all of your lovelies are going home and registering for the tests. If they haven't, you really hit that home today in the meeting. In the meantime, after they've signed up for the SATs, they can then start utilizing Naviance. There's a ton to be done in Naviance to get ready for the application process. The first thing that they need to do is research colleges and create a final list. So we have something in Naviance that's called Supermatch, and it's a great visual tool to help narrow down the kind of infinite options that there are for colleges to choose from. And we also have college rep visits scheduled in Naviance, and I'll talk about that in just a minute and why those are so important. So, and again, I'll break all of these a little bit down further as we go through. The second thing they need to do after researching colleges and creating their final list is to match their Common App account and Naviance. This is important because if we're sending everything via Naviance to the Common App, those accounts need to talk to each other. They need to be linked up. So if the accounts aren't matched, we're stuck and we can't send anything off to the Common App for your child. So that's another important step, and we'll talk about how your child has to do that. The next thing that they can work on is completing surveys for teacher letters of recommendation. So again, they've asked their teacher in person, maybe they've brought a baked good, I don't know, sweeten the deal a little bit, right, Mr. Matz? Wouldn't you like a baked good? Right? So you bring a baked good, you bring a smile, you ask very politely, you give them plenty of notice, And then once they say yes, because they can't resist that cupcake, then you can go into Naviance and formally request it. That's kind of the second piece of the puzzle. What that formal requesting does is it allows that teacher to see the survey that they're going to complete about that teacher and why they chose them in their class and what they can write about in their letter of recommendation. Again, I'll break all of these down a little bit more. This is just the overview. The last thing you need to do, your wonderful child, is complete the guidance counselor surveys. So there's the autobiography survey. This is very long. We ask them a ton of questions about themselves, hard questions. It's not something that they can just get done in an hour or two. And so they really need to start working on this now, because the better they answer those kind of soul-searching type questions, the better we can write their letter of recommendation. The other things we ask for are an extracurricular survey, like what have they done in 4 years? Have you done show choir? Have you done Girl Scouts? Do you play the bassoon? What's your special kind of passion and talent? Also, a resume could act similarly to get that information. We ask them to do a resume as well. And then you have homework. Sorry. There's a parent-guardian survey. We like to ask you guys about your kids, because who knows them better than you? And sometimes you'll have kids who they don't even think something's kind of special about them, that you are like, oh my gosh, this was amazing what you did. Or, you're an Eagle Scout, or every day you came home and you helped your grandmother, and took care of her. There's things that we find out through the parent survey that are just so exceptional and wonderful, and we want to put that in the letter of recommendation. So that's why we ask you to kind of share your special kind of notes about your child with us, so we can include some of that in the letter. All right, so let's dive into the nitty-gritty Naviance types of pieces here. So, as I said, the first thing you have to do is research colleges. You need to know, what you're looking for. So here's what Naviance kind of looks like now. Again, they redesigned everything this year, so we're all kind of getting used to it. Under the colleges tab up here, you'll see Find Your Fit. There's where Supermatch lives, College Match, Scattergrams, College Searching, College Lookup. These are all of the tools that are going to help your child start to figure out where they may want to apply. I'll show you a little bit of Supermatch in just a minute, but the College Match is great. It can help your child identify what colleges could be a good fit for them based on some criteria. Scattergrams tells them where they fall in terms of who applied to those schools from here in the past. Advanced College Search and College Lookup, let's say they just want to know about Yale. They type in Yale, and here's all the information. It's right here. So this is a great place to start in terms of figuring out what school you may want to apply to. So here's what Supermatch looks like. So if you were to click on that Supermatch link, this is what your child would see. So up here at the top, and again, I apologize if these are so small, they shrunk my projector when they did it over again this summer. Here's all the different pieces that they can look into for criteria. The first is location. So your child could say to themselves, I only want to be in New England. I can't leave New England. I have to be near the seasons. Or they could say, you know what? I don't want to be in the Carolinas. Hurricane Florence. Let's stay away from that, right? So that's the first piece of the puzzle, and that will really help to narrow down their list quite quickly. We always really encourage kids to talk about location and think about location. Some of you may want your children to travel far, some of you may want your children close. Have those conversations with them and see where they're at. The next piece of the puzzle is academics. So this is going to tell you the programs that are offered at that school. So let's say your child wants to major in art history and they only want to be in New Jersey. That's going to be kind of a short list, right? Someone finds that hilarious, right? I know, it's kind of a weird thought. New Jersey for art history, but it could happen, right? So if that is something kind of important to your child, major, most kids know kind of what they want to major in. That's another important piece of criteria you want to put in. You don't want to start applying to schools that don't have the major you're interested in. The next piece of the puzzle is admission. This tells you how competitive it is to get into that school. So you can click certain criteria and say, I want schools that accept 100% of the applicants, everybody. Or I want a school that accepts 25% or less. I want a really competitive school. I need a reach school on my list. So that is another place where they can start to think about, reach, possible safety for them, and what they're looking for in terms of selectivity. Diversity is next. How diverse of a campus are they interested in? Institution characteristics, there's all these little kind of niche questions about what that institution is like, what are their priorities, what the campus is like, cost, that's an important one, student life, athletics, etc. Okay. So here, you're going to select criteria in two categories. Must have, these are the things you have to have in order to be happy at school. And then there's the nice to have. Those are things you could live without, but it'd be great if that school had one. Okay? So these are the different fit criteria that your child's going to put into Supermatch, and I did a little example for you. So I said to myself, I have to be in Ohio. Have to be in Ohio. I love it so much. Can't be away from Ohio, right? I also said my must-have was I needed to be in a city. Needed to be in a city in Ohio. Isn't that special? Doesn't that sound good? My husband would be so proud. He's from Ohio. He'd be thrilled to talk about Ohio. In the nice to have, I said acceptance rate. I wanted something that would accept 75% or more of students. Pretty open selectivity. So I put those criteria in, and then it spit out this list for me. So here's what your child may get. And again, I apologize that the screen is just small. So here we have Youngstown State. It says it's in Ohio, in a small city. It says it meets 100% of my criteria. Everything I asked for, it has. It tells me the academic match, the average GPA, average SAT scores, average ACT scores. It also tells me the tuition and fees, how much money it will cost me to go to that school. Okay? In addition, it will also link to their website. There's lots of different ways to find more information about all of these schools on this list. It also has photos and videos on the profile, so they have little highlight reels of what's great about the school. So this is kind of a nice place to start. Right here it says pin to compare. If your child pins multiple schools, it will set them all up and start to compare different pieces of information about those schools. It'll compare cost, it'll compare size, it'll compare selectivity. So your child can look at 3-4 schools and say, okay, what do these schools have in common? How are they different? What's harder to get into? And it will just really allow your child more information. Okay? So again, this is Supermatch. Does that kind of make sense? Any questions on Supermatch so far? Okay. So in addition to Supermatch, the College Board has a great search website. You can always go to the College Board. We like that too. I would do a little bit of Supermatch and a little bit of the College Board website. There is Asking Your Guidance Counselor. We've been doing this a while. We kind of get a feel for schools and where a student might thrive, so they can always ask us for recommendations. There's college view books and college handbooks in the library and in the guidance office. Again, they send all these lovely print materials, and has a child ever come down to look at a book? The answer is no. But they're there if they really want one. The website, that's really where kids are learning about schools, and that's where they should go. They're glossy, they're attractive, they're interactive, there's a lot going on. Have them go to the website. That's where I would really start. There's also local college fairs. If you saw my guidance letter that I send home every summer, it's on the website. It has all the local college fairs listed. There's a bunch of them coming up, some very, very close by, WPI, etc. And they have hundreds of schools all at once. So your child can walk around to all the different booths and talk to the reps and kind of get a feel for schools that they might be interested in. So college fair is a great way to see a bunch of schools a little bit at once. Visits with college admission reps. And I'm going to talk about this more in depth in just a minute. Online search engines, as I said, collegeboard.org has a great one. The Naviance website, MassCIS has some information as well. The other piece of the puzzle are those visits and interviews like I talked about before. You're not going to look to spend the money you're spending on college and never have seen the campus, never have set foot on there. Get your child in front of that campus, on that campus, talking to people, seeing where they want to go is a good fit for them. And again, the interviews are very, very helpful, especially if your child might be a little bit below the typical criteria for a student. Okay? So college rep visits. Now every year we have about 75 colleges come and visit us here at Tantascwa. They send their reps and they meet in the guidance office with any interested students. So students are able to sign up for these visits on Naviance here. They register right here. And they have to print a pass to show that they're signed up and get their teacher's signature and permission, and then they're able to come down to talk with their representative. I tried to impress upon your children the importance today of going to these visits, and here is the reason. Colleges are sending the people, the specific people responsible for our territory when they do their rep visits. So what that means is, if Joanna Jones comes from Endicott College, and she meets with all of our wonderful students, and they're all talking, asking great questions, and she's just falling in love with them. Oh, look at these wonderful warriors, they're just amazing. She is the person who's going to be getting their applications in a few months. And she's the person who's going to be deciding their fate. Yes, no, in or out. So, wouldn't it be wonderful if Joanna Jones could see that child's application come across her desk and think, oh, that wonderful young man, he was so articulate, he was so poised, he had such a great sense of humor. I have to have this child at Endicott College. This is amazing. I love this kid. Again, your kid is going to have a transcript similar to other children. They're going to have SAT scores similar to other children. But if they can stand out enough personally and make it that much of an impression that that application is kind of remembered and flagged because they loved your kid in person, that can make all the difference. I told this, yes ma'am.
So is this on the school website?
Nope, it's on Naviance. Everything is on Naviance.
I mean, the Tantascwa, the reps coming to Tantascwa.
Yeah, well, they're on Naviance. They're
Okay,
all listed, the dates and the times that
Okay.
they're coming, all in Naviance, absolutely. And I told this story today. So I had a young man 2 years ago. He was in love with this college. There was this one college, it was it. He had wanted to go here since the beginning of time. Academically, he was not going to cut muster, and I was worried because it didn't look good for the boy. It was a reach school and a reach school and a reach school. He went to the rep visit. He and the rep, they just clicked. They talked, they chatted, they started emailing back and forth. They emailed for months and months up through the application process, and the boy's there today. He's at that school today. And that's, I truly believe it's because he made that connection with the representative, and she fell in love with him, and she knew he was a perfect fit, personality-wise, for that school, and didn't want to let him go, even if his test scores were a little low. So again, please have your kids go to these meetings. They're really important. When I see a rep sitting there with no kids, and I know kids are applying to that school, it just like breaks my heart because we look foolish, you know, as a school to have these people begging to meet with our kids and no one's there. So please encourage your child to go onto Naviance and to look at the list. And literally there's 70 schools there, time, days, right there they can register. Okay? Any questions about those rep visits? Yes?
How do you know what schools people choose once they send an application to tell them really
We can't really until they put it in Naviance as a school they're planning to apply to. So again, that comes down to them doing the research and kind of finalizing their list. And I'll talk about finalizing the list in just a minute. But yeah, it does come down to them kind of putting that info in Naviance for us to be triggered to say, hey, you're applying here. The rep's coming next week. You know, make sure you sign up. You can log in as your child. If they give you the information, you can absolutely log in. If you can't, if they won't let you log in, you can call me and I'll tell you. I'll happily tell you what's coming. But hopefully they'll let you have access. There's nothing secret in audience, right? Any other questions on the college visits? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So again, same kind of thing. Your lovely's going to log in and say, Mom, Dad, guardian, come and sit right here and type this out. Mrs. Cantrell needs that. And sometimes under duress, it happens. I've never actually had a problem over in 10 years of doing this. Parents have been really about filling it out. So, any other questions on the visits or anything so far? Okay. So your child has done the research, okay? They've visited the schools, they've met with the reps, they've used Supermatch, they've used College Board, they're coming up with that list. That's really the most critical piece because so much is based on that list and what that school needs in terms of an application. So again, they're pinning schools, they're adding them to that colleges I'm thinking about list, which is kind of the list in the middle. It's the list of schools that are interesting to you, that you find could work. And then eventually, from the research, from colleges I'm thinking about, you're adding them to colleges I'm applying to. That is the final list, which I just kind of spoke about, in Naviance that tells me where to send your application materials. And we say here, the schools listed here in colleges I'm applying to have to be accurate. If they're not accurate, teacher letters don't make it there, counselor letters don't make it there, things get all wonky. So that list has to be accurate at all times, okay? The list itself, just to talk more generally about it, should have about 8 to 10 schools. I've seen kids with 20 schools, and I just think to myself, why love the child? Why? It's wrong. Don't do it. It's too stressful. It's too expensive. It's too many things to organize and keep your mind on with deadlines. Don't do it. That's bananas. That's insane. 8 to 10 schools is a great, great number. That doesn't mean that your child can't have 4 solid schools that are a good fit for them. That's fine too. It doesn't have to be 10 schools, of course, but let's not go overboard. There should be some reach schools. Those are those schools that are, here's the typical kid and here's your kiddo in terms of test scores, GPA, etc., right? It's going to be a bit of a reach. They should have some possible target schools. Those schools that, here's the kid's typical criteria, here's your kid, right there, right on target. And then they should also have some safety schools. This is where the typical profile is here, your kid's up here. We know they're going to get in if they're a shooter. Why do you think I would say that every list should have a safety school? So you know they're going somewhere. That is absolutely one of the right answers. Yeah. There's a lot of really great things that happen for students who are transferring between Quincy and the state universities. There's something called mass transfer, articulation agreements, there's tuition waivers, there's all sorts of good stuff. That's true too. Why else would we say safety schools should be on the list? What happens if the typical kid's here and your kid's way up here? They want them. They want them, right? And they're going to throw money at them. That's the hope, right? Because they want to improve their standards and their status in terms of selectivity. So they might be very willing to give great grants, merit, scholarships, things like that to your child, and then a $60,000 bill comes down to the price of the state school, right? And that's what we all want to see. So we always want them to have reach possibles and safeties. The other thing I would say is private and public options. Again, private schools, not to say that this is always the case, but they are typically more expensive, $50,000, $60,000 a year. I hate to even think of what it will cost when my 4-month-old is 18. I have to give a kidney or something, I don't know. But it's a lot of money, and the public schools are 25, 30, right? So you want to have a lot of different financial options on the table for your family. I have to tell you, when families avoid the tough financial conversations with their child, it only goes badly. Because what will happen is your child will fall in love with this amazing school, and that is so expensive and out of your family's price range. And you'll be praying that they don't get in. And then they'll get in. And then you have to tell them they can't go. It's ugly. It is sad. It's awful for everyone who loves that child. Us, you, the child, it's not pretty. So do yourself a favor and have the ugly, uncomfortable conversation early about what you can realistically afford as a family and how much debt they need to go into or may need to go into themselves, and have those public options on the table, have those safety schools on the table. You want to have financial choices when you get to the end where you're trying to figure out where to go. Does that make sense? All right. So again, we're going to meet with your lovelies and tell them, this school's a safety for you, this school's a reach for you. We're going to help them tailor that list a little bit, so please enlist us to help you. We're happy to do that. And again, I talked about public versus private. You guys know the drill, UMass, state universities, community colleges, and then we have a ton of wonderful private school options here in Massachusetts. We're very, very lucky. So there's plenty to choose from. So now, again, you've done the research, you're coming up with your list. So you're at the colleges tab again, and below the Supermatch area is apply to colleges. Here's where colleges I'm applying to lives, right here. And that's where your child is going to start to add those schools onto the list so that they can see exactly where they're going, and we can see exactly where they're applying. Now, I talked about the importance of matching the Common App and audience before, so let me just kind of go a little bit more in depth on this now. So again, if your child is using the Common App, we have to have these platforms talk to each other, Common App and audience. The first thing you have to do is fill out the FERPA waiver. FERPA stands for Family Educational Rights Privacy Act. Basically, this says, it asks your child, do you consent to have your personal information sent by the school to our college? Okay? So the FERPA has to be signed by your child so that they can give us permission to send their transcript and all of the materials we will send. If they don't sign the FERPA waiver, we're all stuck. Nothing can happen, we can't move forward because we don't have consent to release all that information. Now the FERPA waiver asks a very specific question to your child. It says, do you consent to release all this information? Yes. But it also says, do you waive your right to see the letters of recommendation that are submitted on your behalf after you get into a college? Because sometimes you could walk down to the college registrar and look at your file and see all your letters that your teachers wrote for you and your counselor wrote for you. It asks you if you want to waive that right to do that. The colleges would like your child to say no. Or excuse me, yes, I apologize. Yes, yes, your child is listening. That's good. Yes. Why do you think the colleges would like your child to waive their right to see the letters that are written on their behalf? Correct. It just gives them that security and that faith that the letters are written without any interference or any worry that down the line something's going to be brought up and said when the child looks at the letter a few years down the line. And what I always say is this: if you have a teacher who's willing to write your letter, are they going to write something nasty about you? Of course not. They're going to write only the most positive and wonderful things about you. So there's nothing to worry about. You're not waiving your right to see something worrisome, okay? You're waiving your right and just giving the colleges that faith that it was written totally with truth and integrity and objectivity. So again, you're signing the FERPA waiver in the Common App, and then you're matching the Common App account. And of course, you have to make a Common App account first. So you can't link to accounts if you haven't made one first. So make sure that your child goes to Common App and actually makes their Common App account. Then they can sign the FERPA waiver piece, and then they can match Common App. And again, if these are not matched, we cannot send any materials for them. And so here's what it looks like. Under colleges I'm applying to, when they first go in, it'll say, it looks like you are not currently able to apply to Common App schools. Match your Common App account to Naviance to get started. Match accounts. It's a quick button, they put in their date of birth, boop, linked, done. Okay? So as long as they're set up on Common App and they fill the FERPA waiver out, it takes 1 minute to do it on the Naviance end. Okay? But that's a very important piece.
Can you just go back to slide
We're so tech savvy. I wouldn't have even thought to do. I'd be like scribbling notes with my pen, right? Are we good? Okay. Back up. Okay. The next piece of the puzzle in Naviance. So again, you've researched your schools. You've created your final list. You have employed matching those two accounts, and now here we are at requesting teacher recommendations and requesting transcripts. There's a little button where you have to request a transcript to be sent to a school from the counselor. I'll show you guys how to do that in a second. And then again, you're asking those two teachers in person to write a letter of recommendation. And then once they agree in person, you're requesting them formally in Naviance. That's that second piece, and they have to have that request in there so they can see their survey answers. If they never formally request it, teacher can't see the survey, teacher can't write the letter. After they've requested that letter of recommendation, they can fill out the survey and take care of it. And again, teachers from junior year, teachers they've had more than once, teachers in their major area of interest, those are the ones to think about. So here's what it looks like. Down under apply to colleges, it says colleges I'm applying to. Here's letters of recommendation right here. Here's managed transcripts. It's all right here under the colleges tab. So your child will click on manage transcripts, request a bunch of transcripts from all of their schools, and then go into letters of recommendation, and here's what it looks like. They're going to add a request. All the teachers are in the drop down. Pick the teacher, type a little nice note. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Could you have it done by November 1? Thank you, thank you, thank you. Send. Done. Yes?
Now, do the students have a similar kind of workshop about how to navigate?
They had this exact workshop.
They do?
Yes.
Okay, because I'm going to need that computer kit to show me.
I hear you. I feel the same way. Nope. I do put my PowerPoint up on the guidance website, so it will be up in a day or so. Yes. Yep, absolutely. So again, add request right here. After you do the teacher surveys, we talked about those guidance surveys. Here we are again, talking about those. Autobiography, extracurricular surveys, parent-guardian survey, that's for you, and the resume. And here's what that looks like. Under About Me, My Surveys, here they all are. Autobiography, activity survey, parent-guardian survey, teacher surveys, resume, all right in one place.
I actually graduated.
Yeah, sure. My condolences.
You have to do all this common too.
It's not that you're doing it again, but there definitely are pieces that you have to do in Naviance for us to be able to send your documents electronically. That's what Naviance really does. It takes, what we used to do is write a letter, print it on letterhead, make 10 copies, put 10 envelopes out, put 10 stamps out, put all of that. I mean, it was, you were paying us a lot of money to shuffle papers, to be quite honest with you, right? So Naviance is here to really streamline that process for everybody. I understand that there's a lot we're asking your kiddo to do in terms of going in and writing survey answers and adding schools. It's not as cumbersome as it seems. It's just because I'm having to do screenshots. If you were able to get in there and play around, it's really not as challenging as it may appear right now, I promise you. It's very intuitive and user-friendly. The kids are really savvy. They pick it up very quickly. And then we, as professionals, are able to just click, 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 send, and it's there. Instead of hoping in a week and a half, it makes it to the college and we're calling and is it there and I don't know, in the mail, did you get it? It just makes it so much easier, and we know the second we send it, it's received, because we get a little confirmation code right then and there that the college has that document right then.
So in a coalition app,
Yes.
does ask for names and recommend.
Yes.
Everybody can fill that out.
So you do, because in Common App you're going to have that information listed there, but in Naviance, to see the survey answers, the teacher needs to be added and requested. In Naviance, right. So if they're not requested in Naviance, they can't see the survey answers, and then they don't have what they need to write their letter. So you do need to just click the box once in each.
So this is more recommended.
It is, because it takes a lot to get 270 kids off to college all at once, and this process has made it infinitely more streamlined, absolutely. Anything else on this? Yes?
I'm very
Me too. I can appreciate that.
And of course, I'm privy to this website.
Yes.
So, I'm gonna hold and pray that she's doing it.
Right.
If we just follow along your
The packet,
September,
Have-
October,
yep.
November,
it has it
that
in
will
there.
give those things that they should be done.
It does, and also those first few pages about Naviance, it tells you all the different things that they have to do in Naviance to be on track. And the thing is, we're meeting with them. So we met with them today in a big group. We meet with them in small groups. Then we, in the computer labs, with computers, so they're all playing on Naviance as I'm up at the front, and we're all walking around and we're looking at things and we're figuring it out together. And then we're also meeting individually multiple times. So we are tracking your kid too, and making sure they're doing what they need to do. Yes?
So when do these groups start? Do you start in their junior year or their senior year?
They're going to start tomorrow for
No,
some
but-
counselors. Yep. So
Juniors, what year, you start when they're juniors, right?
well, we've certainly been meeting with them to talk about college planning since ninth grade, but in terms of the groups to do hands-on
Right,
Naviance
right.
college prep, that does start next week and this week. No, Naviance has been around for the past 6 years for us, but this is just a new platform. It just looks a little different this year than it did in the past. They revamped it this summer. Yeah. They revamped it this summer.
So what she's saying is you're starting with seniors tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Yes, absolutely. We met with them today in a presentation, and then in the next few days, we're going to be calling them all into computer labs,
Okay.
counselor by counselor, to do group meetings.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so time to get organized. Hopefully your child has added all the schools to their list, and they need to know these different pieces for each school. Is it a Common App school or not? That's important to know. What's the deadline? You wouldn't think you have to put that on a list, but you do sometimes. You'll ask a kid, when's your first deadline? That's concerning. You need to know when your stuff is due, or you're not going to get into that school if it's even a minute late past midnight. So again, knowing the deadlines, that's a very important piece of the puzzle. Subject tests, are they needed? Do they need to prepare for those tests as well? Essay, what's the prompt on the application? Because you could write a phenomenal essay, but then what if all of your applications don't ask anything about the essay you wrote? What if the prompt is totally off? If you don't know where you're applying, you can't write the right essay. So you have to know where you're applying. Again, it all comes back to that college list and making sure you know where you're applying. Recommendation letters. How many do they need? Some colleges are firm at 0. Some are firm at 1. Some are firm at 2. That's where most kind of live. 2 teachers, 1 counselor letter. It's usually 2 teachers and 1 counselor letter, 3 total. We had a lovely last year, I don't know what possessed him, but he decided to get 8 letters of recommendation. You had these wonderful teachers writing these lovely letters that could go nowhere. Don't have your child do that. It's not necessary. The colleges don't have time to read 8 letters of recommendation, and also more than that, they'll be mad at your kid for trying to not listening to the directions. Because that's part of this too. You have to read the directions and do what you're asked to do. So don't go overboard on letters. Yes?
So say you have a school administrator that your child has had a good rapport with, like a principal or a vice principal. Do they fall within that teacher recommendation, or is it strictly?
I love the idea that a child is close to an administrator. I think that's always a good thing. But the colleges want to know about your child in the classroom.
Okay.
They want to know about the academic abilities and strengths of your child. I don't know that an administrator can effectively speak to that. So I think you just have to be thoughtful and careful about that if you're going to go that route. Yes?
Like to the college that does not
It's all still being Naviance. Yeah, it's still being Naviance. It's all electronic. Yeah, we zipped it right over, and it's just not through Common App, but it's the same electronic process on our end. On your child's end, they need to complete that school-specific application, not Common App, right? Yes?
Are all the colleges in the United States
Yes. I haven't found one that wasn't. I'll say that. Yeah, I haven't come across one that wasn't yet, so. I'm sorry? It would still be documents, correct, to send the documents. Sometimes there's a little, they'll send links and they'll want certain forms, so it might be a little different sometimes, but yeah. Any other questions on this end? Okay. So last but not least here, they know what the application needs. So they're writing their essays, they're writing the supplements, they're completing the applications, they're submitting those applications, they're sending their SAT scores. Again, SAT score choice, that super score kind of thing we were talking about before. All of that has to happen, in an organized and timely fashion by deadline. The deadlines, just to say a word about those, are for your child. If your child has a November 1 deadline, if they submit the documents at 12:01 on November 2nd, it's going in the trash. So you have to know your deadlines. But this is something that sometimes families and students don't really know. The November 1 deadline is not for me, actually, and it's not for the teachers, and it's not for the SAT scores. We have time to send our things beyond the November 1 deadline. So if our materials arrive on November 2nd, that would be fine. If our materials arrive November 5th, that would usually be fine. If the SAT scores aren't ready until X date, because that's when the College Board releases them, that's fine. They're not going to penalize your child if the scores aren't in their pocket on November 1st. But what does need to be there by November 1st is the application. Essay, application, all those pieces, okay? So that's something really important to remember. So again, we're here to help your child with so much of this, but at the end of the day, they're going to be adults soon, and it really does rest on their shoulders. It can't be you guys writing their essays. It can't be you guys sending their documents for them, right? They're gonna have to do this like the big kiddos that they are. We help them with, a lot of things, but at the end of the day, they have to research and visit the schools. They have to figure out what they love, right? We can't help them with that. They have to finalize that list of schools with your help, figure out what's appropriate for me. They have to coordinate those teacher reps and talk to their teachers and get them squared away. They have to submit the applications. We don't submit their applications for them. They have to do that by deadline. And last but not least, they have to send those SAT scores or ACT scores, okay? So those are the pieces of the puzzle that are their responsibility. Financial aid, we have some good things coming up. Just so you're aware, you can start working on the financial aid process as of October 1st. That's when the FAFSA opens up. FAFSA stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. This is what you're going to need to complete to start the financial aid process, to think about grants, scholarships, loans, etc. You can right now, though, apply for something called the FSA ID. This is the PIN number that you're going to create, kind of the account, so to speak, to start the process. So you can create your PIN in your account right now, and then on October 1st, you can begin submitting your tax documentation. Okay? I would say do it early. Scholarships have very different timelines than the applications, just to add to your fun and add to your stress, right? Sure. Yeah, so we've had those situations, right. So there have been times where you can simply say in your FAFSA, this person is uncooperative, I do not have their financial information, and they will work with you if that truly is the case, yeah. But again, that is a great question for our MIFA night, which I just want to talk about too. So again, FAFSA you can start now, soon, so October 1st, and do your FSA ID now. There's also sometimes college-specific financial aid forms you need to fill out too, which is fun. There's scholarships which are coming up, as I talked about before, so don't panic about scholarships right now. Really, scholarships are more of a spring type of thing, but we do have scholarships coming in all the time, and they're in the guidance office, they're on Naviance, your kids can look them up, they can apply, it's always a good thing, but there's more that come in the spring. And then last but not least, financial aid night. This is where those questions get answered. So on October 10th at 6 p.m., we have the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority coming to speak with us. They've come every year for infinity, and they're great. They talk about, what is expected family contribution, how do they determine aid, what are like the formulas to figure out how much I would have to pay for school. It's a great presentation. I would encourage all of you to be there. So here's where we're at. We've talked a lot about all the different things your kiddo needs to do, and we've told them that we're going to be calling them down very shortly for those group meetings in the labs, and that we're going to do individual meetings after that. They have to really start thinking about some of those tasks, completing those surveys, asking their teachers for letters of rep, and finalizing their college list. That's really what they should be focusing on right now. We also have another great evening event, the College Admission Rep Panel. I kind of spearheaded this 6 years ago, and this is our 7th year now. We have Westfield State, UConn, Smith College, and Clark University coming to speak with us. Basically, they sit up here on a panel. I ask them a lot of questions about the college admissions process. I ask them for inside information in terms of how to get our kids in the door. And they're wonderful. They have so much good information. You're hearing it directly from the people responsible for choosing the acceptance decision of your child. It's a great evening. I would recommend everybody be there on the 27th at 6. We also, as I said, for the kiddos, have the college essay writing workshop. The English and guidance departments have worked together now for the past 6 years as well to do a little workshop for kids. They can bring their completed essay for feedback. They can bring a draft. They can bring nothing and just say, I don't even know where to begin. We break them all up into groups. We talk to them about where they are in the process and how to get them to the next step, whether it's picking a topic, tweaking their essay, whatever the case may be. We've had, 100 kids typically are showing up, and it's a great event. So we encourage your kids to be there after school as well. And then, as I said last, the financial aid presentations, October 10th at 6. So these are the next 3 things that your child and you should be thinking about. The last thing is Remind. I am the administrator for the senior class on Remind. And if you want me to harass you with deadlines and reminders, I told them I'm going to be like your mom and kind of nag you about things. I would sign up, you as well. I encourage parents to sign up so you can see what's going on. I have 150 kids right now, and it'd be great to have more. So if you want to join Remind, you just text 81010 with the words @2019 THS, or you can email that number. I'll leave this up at the end here. So you can sign up and get some reminders. Yeah. You should, yeah, because it's the same from last year. We're just kind of transitioning on with the class. So now I'm the administrator because they're seniors, and there's 150 people who are already there. So, Okay, so that's a great way to stay in touch with us. Yeah. 81010, and then text that word @2019 THS, and you should be signed up. That's right. I know, it seems crazy, right? It's like, is this magic really working? But it does. It really does. Okay? So again, this is a great way to stay in touch, and I've been blasting people with reminders about this presentation all week and last week, so hopefully if you've gotten a few of them, they're from me. Thanks for coming. Okay? All right, so I think because I've been wordy, we're going to conclude, but I'll certainly open it up to any questions. I feel like we've covered a lot tonight, and I don't want to overwhelm anybody and bring